Chris Martin just fired back at tech billionaire Andy Byron after that viral Coldplay kiss cam moment, and the fallout isn't over. Fresh angles, a debunked apology, and loud rumors of a lawsuit now collide with boardroom pressure and reputations on the line. This is how a 15-second joke became a corporate crisis and why Coldplay decided to double down instead of back off. It was supposed to be another glow-stick sing-along under a sea of confetti. Then the giant screen froze on two faces that went equally still. Tech billionaire Andy Byron and his company's head of HR, Kristen Cabot. The crowd leaned in. Chris Martin tossed a playful line. Either they're having an affair, or they're just very shy. And the place erupted. What lasted 15 seconds felt like an hour. The hesitation, the tight smiles, the awkward body language that read louder than the music. In a stadium built for spectacle, silence did the damage. You could feel the mood flip from fun to wait. What did we just see? Clips shot up from every angle. Phone cameras caught the moment. The feeds did the rest. Within minutes, the kiss cam cut was looping on timelines, captioned 100 different ways, each punchier than the last. People weren't just laughing, they were scrutinizing. Who are they? Why together? Where are their spouses? The questions multiplied faster than the views. What really stung wasn't the joke, it was the context. Andy is the face of his company. Kristen is the person tasked with enforcing its boundaries. That pairing on the biggest screen in the building turned a cute routine into a flashing red alarm. In the stands, strangers elbowed each other with the same thought. This won't stay in the stadium. By the time the confetti settled, narratives had already split. Some called it harmless. Others called it brazen. A few insisted it was all coincidence. But the timeline didn't care about nuance. It cared about momentum. Every share added a spin. Every comment tightened the story. For Andy, the fallout began before he reached the exit. A brand he'd spent years polishing suddenly had a hairline crack, and everyone knows what happens to hairline cracks online. They widen. The meme storm was the immediate hit. The quiet, creeping damage was much worse, because the most uncomfortable part wasn't the chant, the camera, or the joke. It was the roles attached to the faces on that screen. Power, policy, and perception collided in public. And the moment they did, the next chapter wrote itself. But the real heat wasn't on social media. It was waiting in the office the next morning. By sunrise, the clip wasn't just viral. It was everywhere. Looping on feeds, spliced into reaction videos, turned into punchlines, parodies, and freeze-frame breakdowns. People weren't only laughing. They were analyzing micro-expressions. The pause, the proximity, every glance. Internet detectives built timelines out of 10 seconds of awkwardness in a single one-liner. Then came the commentary spiral. Threads argued over boundaries, power, and optics. Some framed it as a harmless bit caught in a harsh spotlight. Others saw a red flag moment, the kind that erodes trust in an instant. The more the clip spread, the less it felt like a joke. It became a Rorschach test for workplace culture, leadership image, and the reality of life under a stadium camera. Inside the company, the tone shifted from bemused to brittle. Phones lit up, PR playbooks came off the shelf. Legal got looped in for briefings. Not because of a verdict, there wasn't one, but because perception had begun hardening into a story. And once a story sets online, reversing it is like rowing against a riptide.
Employees did what employees do in 2025. They watched, they whispered, they posted private chats filled with screenshots and side-eye emojis.
The same people who once quoted leadership maxims now shared memes. It wasn't mutiny, it was morale taking on water. When your brand is "we do the right thing," even a hint that you don't hits like a body shot. Meanwhile, outside voices poured fuel on everything. New angles popped up, sometimes clearer, sometimes not. Threads claimed receipts, while debunkers shouted fake. A supposed apology circulated, then got called out as bogus. The signal-to-noise ratio tanked. What mattered wasn't proof, it was velocity, and the clip still had it. Rumors of legal action flashed next. Words like defamation and privacy bubbled up in headlines and comment sections. But the fine print public venue jumbotron norms, live event disclaimers, kept getting buried under the spectacle. The internet loves the idea of a bombshell lawsuit. It cares less about whether one actually exists. By midweek, the crisis had two fronts, the timeline and the team. The first demanded smart, steady messaging. The second needed trust, clarity, and a plan that respected policies everyone could live with. Whether anyone liked it or not, This wasn't about a joke anymore. It was about credibility. And credibility gets decided in quieter rooms where cameras aren't rolling and choices start to carry real consequences. The internet turned the moment into a spectacle. The board turned it into an agenda item. Emergency calls, outside counsel, a governance checklist pulled off the shelf and followed line by line, not because a verdict had landed, but because perception was already moving markets faster than any press release. At companies of that size, speed is the strategy. When the face of the brand sits at the center of a storm, especially one touching workplace boundaries, boards move to separate the person from the platform. It's not about guilt or innocence in that first week, it's about continuity, credibility, and the message you send to employees who are watching every step. That's why the first visible move felt inevitable. Leadership transition, titles changed. Statements emphasized stability, focus, and minimizing distraction. No admissions, no details. Just enough to show the company, not the scandal, was back in the driver's seat. Investors heard what they needed. The machine keeps running. Inside the org chart, the next domino made sense too. An HR leader can't be both guardian of policy and subject of an inquiry. So the role shifted, then exited. It wasn't just optics. It was operational reality. You can't run a culture review when the culture's referee is part of the headline. The atmosphere at headquarters told the rest of the story. Teams asked for clarity. Clients asked for assurances. Job candidates asked hard questions in interviews. Trust is currency, and the balance was suddenly lower than anyone liked. So the board did what boards do, launched an independent review, tightened communications, and drew a clean line between the company's values and the personalities involved. On paper, the playbook worked. The fire was contained. But beyond the paperwork, a louder debate kept building. Could a courtroom rewrite what a stadium camera had already burned into memory? The legal chatter was getting louder and about to collide with reality. The word lawsuit spread faster than the clip. Defamation, privacy, emotional distress. Comment sections treated them like magic words, as if saying them out loud could rewind a stadium moment. But here's the reality. Rumors online don't equal filings in court. And even if papers landed tomorrow, the path would be uphill.
Start with defamation. You need a false statement of fact, not a joke, not a quip, not an opinion framed in obvious banter to a laughing crowd. You also need fault. And if the person is a public figure or close enough to it, that bar jumps to actual malice. Spur-of-the-moment line at a concert, heard by thousands as playful teasing, doesn't easily morph into a provable lie that ruined a reputation all by itself. What about privacy?
In a stadium, the baseline is brutal. Minimal expectation of privacy and broad consent through the ticket terms. Venues warn you might appear on camera. Kiss cams are a known thing. That doesn't make every moment fair game forever, but it does make you showed my face on the screen a weak pillar to build a case on. The more public the setting, the thinner that claim gets. Intentional infliction of emotional distress? That requires conduct so extreme it shocks a judge on its own. A lighthearted call-out during a routine fan segment seldom hits that threshold. Courts usually reserve outrageous for threats, stalking, or truly abusive campaigns. Not a one-liner folded into a show that depends on audience interaction. There's also the trapdoor few talk about: discovery. Sue a global act and the doors open both ways. Emails, DMs, calendars, policies. Suddenly everything is fair game. If your brand is already wobbling, discovery can turn a rumor mill into a document dump. That's not leverage, that's exposure.
Could someone still file?
Of course, people sue over less every day, but turning a viral cringe into a courtroom win is another matter entirely. The stronger move, historically, is to fix the brand, settle the culture, and stop feeding the algorithm with legal theatrics it can mock. Because once the internet calls it a stretch, the judge isn't far behind. And while the legal talk churned, something else landed. New angles of the moment, and a wave of receipts, real and fake, that would spin the story again. Just when it felt like the timeline had finally caught its breath, the clip came back with reinforcements. New angles surfaced from different rows. Side profiles, wider frames, and a cleaner shot of the Jumbotron moment. Each one added a little more texture. You saw the hesitation from a different seat, the half smiles from another lens, the way the crowd's laughter swelled and then stalled. None of it changed the core 15 seconds. but it sharpened the edges. The re-uploads kicked off a second wave of amateur forensics. People slowed the audio. They zoomed on posture. They argued over who leans first, who freezes, who looks away. To some, the added footage softened the moment. 2 people caught off guard, nothing more. To others, it hardened it. Matching energy, synchronized stillness, the kind of coordination that doesn't happen by accident. The same 10 seconds, 2 entirely different stories. Then a supposed statement began circulating, an apology attributed to Andy that read just contrite enough to feel real. It spread fast, screenshotted, reposted, stitched into commentary videos as if it were confirmed. Hours later, it collapsed. Dates didn't line up, handles didn't match, the source trail fell apart. In the span of an afternoon, a neat narrative turned into a cautionary tale about wishful thinking and fake receipts. That debunk didn't slow everything down. It sped up the skepticism. People started asking tougher questions about every leak. Was the calendar screenshot edited? Was that Slack message cropped? Did that email header even use the right format? The noise didn't just get louder, it got trickier. And in that kind of storm, the smartest move isn't shouting louder. It's choosing what not to say. Inside the company, the new evidence cycle didn't change the operational math. You can't govern by snippets. You check policies, collect verified facts, separate rumor from rec. Externally, though, the optics were unmistakable. The more angles the internet saw, the more the original moment calcified into folklore. Not because it was proven in court, but because repetition makes memory feel like truth.
And then came the quiet twist.
While the rumor mill pushed unverified statements, the band made an unmistakable choice on stage. Keep the bit, keep the screens, keep the kiss cam energy that started this in the first place. No speeches, no countersuits, no threaded notes app posts, just a show that refused to flinch. That wasn't silence. That was strategy. And it landed like a reply without a single direct quote, setting up the next move in plain view. No press conference, no clarification, no thread. Chris Martin answered the noise with something quieter and sharper. He kept the bit, the big screen stayed. The playful camera sweep stayed. The moment that detonated a meme, it returned to the set list like nothing had changed. That was an accident. That was message. When a story tries to swallow you, you don't have to jump into its mouth. You can let the show do the talking. Each arena heard the same unspoken reply. We're not rattled. The band leaned into joy, not drama, and the crowd got it. Fans showed up with homemade signs, inside jokes, and lines pulled from that night. Laughter replaced outrage. The atmosphere flipped from scandal to ritual. On stage, Martin's tone didn't harden, it lightened. A wink here, a tossed aside there, not a drag-out rebuttal, more like a shrug that said, "We do this every tour." He kept it human, kept it moving. That's a power move disguised as playfulness. Because while statements feed the algorithm, consistency starves it. Keep playing the hits, keep the cameras rolling, make the internet chase you, not the other way around. There's a reason this worked. The band's brand is warmth, not warfare. If he'd fired off a legal broadside or a defensive monologue, it would have bent the whole identity out of shape. Instead, he protected the vibe. He reminded people why they came. Lights, color, sing-alongs, the shared joke of being part of the show. He turned an accusation pipeline into a participation loop. Even the risk felt calculated. The Kiss segment lives on in a very public setting. Tens of thousands watching together, knowing the rules, waiting for the bit. That visibility dilutes the claim that this was some targeted ambush. It reads as what it's always been, a communal game with a rotating cast of strangers. And when a tradition keeps appearing, audience after audience, it stops feeling like a weapon and returns to being a tradition. The side effect: momentum migrated, headlines cooled, ticket demand didn't. The narrative shifted from damage to defiance by delight. And here's the part that stings if you're on the other side. Silence from the stage can be louder than a podium speech, but a running joke is louder still. It keeps reminding the world that you're unbothered. Could someone still try to drag that joke into court?
Maybe.
People try all kinds of angles when the SOT lead burns, but Martin's move set up the most inconvenient question for any would-be claim. In a place built for cameras, under terms everyone accepts, what exactly was the offense? And that leads to the next uncomfortable truth. One printed in tiny letters on the back of almost every ticket. Flip over any stadium ticket, That tiny block of text isn't decoration. It's consent. By entering, you agree you might appear on screens in broadcasts and in recordings used for the show and promotions tied to it. It's a simple trade. You get the spectacle. The venue gets the right to point a camera at the crowd.
Now add the setting. Tens of thousands of people, open sightlines. A giant screen built to find faces and spark reactions. In that world, reasonable expectation of privacy shrinks to almost nothing. A kiss cam isn't a sneak attack. It's a tradition. Everyone knows the bit. Everyone sees the camera sweep. The moment you're in the bowl, you're in the background of someone's memory and often the foreground of the Jumbotron. Right of publicity. It's about using your face to sell a product.
A crowd shot inside the show's own program isn't the same as your image slapped on a billboard for soap. The use is incidental to the event itself. No endorsement implied. No separate ad campaign built on your name. It's part of the shared experience you paid to attend. Privacy torts? They're strongest in private spaces, not stadiums with spotlights, roaming cams, and warnings at the gate. Venues post notices, tickets carry terms, signs near entrances repeat the message. The law looks at all of that and sees consent, not ambush. Even defamation, if someone tried that angle, runs into two walls. First, the comment has to be taken as a statement of fact, not obvious banter during a comedy-tinged moment. Second, you still have to prove it caused the damage on its own, which is hard when the clip, the crowd, and the later choices all play roles. And then comes discovery, the part nobody in a PR storm wants. File a suit, and you open the door to emails, chats, travel calendars, and policy documents. If your goal is to shrink the story, discovery often does the opposite. It turns speculation into exhibit. Put it together and the picture is clear. The venue's terms, the public setting, the nature of the bit, and the risks of discovery all tilt the field against a courtroom win, which raises the only question that matters now. If legal angles won't fix the damage, what will? That answer lives beyond the cameras, and whether the brand, the culture, and the people who run them can rebuild trust when the music stops. The clip faded. The questions didn't. Brands don't recover with a single statement, they heal by pattern. Weeks of steady choices, fewer headlines, more clarity. That's the work now. Inside the company, trust becomes the metric. Clear policies, clean reporting lines, a culture audit that isn't theater. People need to see process, not spin. They need to feel like rules still mean something when the cameras aren't looking. Externally, clients want predictability. They don't need gossip. They need continuity, deliverables on time, points of contact that don't change every week. Quiet competence is the antidote to a loud scandal. It always has been. Expect the classic levers: independent review, revised codes of conduct, fresh HR leadership with real authority, training that's not a box check, but a pressure test. None of that goes viral. All of it works. As for legal fireworks, the likeliest outcome is the one that never trends. No case, no podium, no discovery, just silence. NDAs, and a long road back to normal. The internet will call that boring. Governance will call it smart. For the band, the path is simpler. Keep touring, keep the bit, let the crowd own the punchline. The show moves forward, and with it the narrative. Joy outruns drama. When you refuse to chase it, public memory will do what it always does. It won't forget, but it will refile. The moment becomes a reference, not a headline, a shorthand for what can go wrong when optics, power, and timing collide. What lingers is the lesson. Reputation is elastic until it isn't. One awkward beat can stretch it thin. Only consistent behavior thickens it again. That's not a legal strategy. That's a leadership one.
So what's next? Either this becomes a case study in overreacting to a joke, or a blueprint for repairing trust after a public stumble.
The difference won't be decided on stage or online. It'll be decided by what people do when nobody's recording. And yes, there's one last twist left. The part where a 15-second laugh turns into a long-term mirror. Because beneath the memes and the think pieces, this story was never just about a camera. It was about control. And who keeps it when the lights go out. 15 seconds. That's all it took to turn a stadium joke into a boardroom reckoning and a global debate about power, privacy, and poise. The rumor mill wanted a trial. Chris Martin chose a smile. One path fed the fire. The other let it burn out on its own. That contrast is the story. If there's a takeaway, it's this. The internet doesn't hand out verdicts. It hands out momentum. You win it back with pattern, not press releases. With actions, not outrage. And sometimes the sharpest reply isn't a statement at all. It's refusing to break character. So I want to hear from you. Was this overblown spectacle or a real test of leadership? If a camera landed on you tonight, how much privacy do you think you'd actually have? And in a world where everyone's recording, who really owns the moment? The person in the clip or the crowd that shares it? Drop your take in the comments. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what drops next. Thanks for watching to the end. Because as always, the last seconds are where the real questions start.